Hello, everybody. Welcome to Movies by McManus, the podcast where we talk about movies, comics, TV, books, whatever kind of media you're into, in the context of who created it and what effect it's trying to have on the world. I'm your host, Greg. I'm joined with my brother, Mike.
Hello.
And
Good to be back.
Good to be back. And today we're going to be talking about the 2020 film Lost Girls, directed by Liz Garbus. Before we really get into it, I kind of want to just give some brief summary of what the movie is. So
let's just give a quick shout out to Robert Kolker, who the movie is based on his book called Lost Girls. So I just want to make that clear from the get-go.
And it's the true story of the Long Island serial killer, which me and my brother were obviously both from Long Island, so we knew a lot about this case before going into this movie. This is part of the reason why we wanted to do this movie, why Robert Kolker's book meant kind of so much to me, because it was something that I was experiencing in real time, at least like through the news.
Yes.
It was something that really everyone on Long Island was experiencing at the same time. I mean, that
and to current day too.
Yes.
I mean, this is the bulk of what the quote unquote Long Island serial killer is, kick-started from, was the discovery of what they refer to as the Gilgo 4, which was the 4 first victims to be identified in 2010.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you follow the case, it stretches basically from 1996 to about 2011. Some people think it went even a little further than that. But also, if you just follow the case, I mean, those discoveries were made then, but they're discovering victims. They discovered a new identity of one of the bodies they had found just a couple months ago. So it's a case that's kind of ever evolving, and
it is, but specifically in that winter of 2010 into 2011, just the fear, kind of just everybody was kind of really interested in this. Interested is the wrong word, but really just like grappled by the idea of there was this a serial killer who was leaving bodies for years that nobody knew about. And,
it was kind of just a shocking thing, because you'd open the paper and you're like, holy shit, they found a body off of Ocean Parkway, like that's fucking crazy. The next day it just never stopped. Like once they found the first sets of remains, it just kind of went on for months, and you're like, next thing you know, there's a fucking graveyard by the beach.
Especially since Gilgo Beach and Jones Beach are such like known as family-friendly places that, you take your kids on the weekends during the summer. It was very shocking. And I remember I had a friend who when the bodies were found, she was saying she was never going to go to the beach again. Because obviously I'm not going to say her name, but she had like found a body when she was young, and
what?
How do
I not know this story?
Her and her mother, when a friend of mine, when they were young, had stumbled across a body in the woods.
Jesus.
And she was terrified that if she went to the beach, she was going to find a body.
Yeah.
And it
she
was
had a pretty good chance.
Yes.
No, I mean, just to be clear, these were not found on the beach. There was one body, I think, in 2013 that actually washed ashore, but it's not connected to these bodies, they don't think. But these were found basically in what they refer to as the Bramble. Basically, you have Ocean Parkway, which is a highway all the way south on Long Island, which connects Jones Beach and goes to, Fire Island and out to Robert Moses, and then eventually to Oak Beach and to Captree and all that stuff. But it's a straight shot of highway. And they basically were thrown or placed off the side of the highway. So they're not like, when we say on the beach, it's not literally on the beach.
Yeah, it's hard for I can imagine
Very
like
close to the water.
I
though.
can imagine like people who are not from Long Island not understanding really the significance of Ocean Parkway. That the fact that this is an area that every single person on the island is very familiar with. So the fact that this
Especially South Shore.
especially if you are on the South Shore, if you're from Massapequa like we are, that it is a highway that everybody on Long Island is very familiar with. Everybody has like taken a drive down there in the summer at some point. And I mean, the fact that this man was using it as a burial site for his victims, it almost like made it personal for people of Long Island, of like, you are one, you are murdering people, and two, you are using this spot and desecrating it. And
Yeah.
I don't want to like put lightly, the fact that these were actual these are victims, and that they are real people with real lives, with real families, and people
course.
care about them, because
That's
that
what this whole
is
book
what the
about.
movie is about.
And the movie. Yeah.
So let's get back to the movie. So
I just want to touch on, because you brought up Ocean Parkway, and I'm sure basically any podcast or show that covers the Long Island serial killer, they're most likely going to point this out, but it bears repeating, because it just goes to show why this was chosen as a location. That if you spent any time on it, especially at night, it's a very desolate road, and you could kind of easily not get lost, but you could easily kind of not be found. It's easy to, especially before there was any sort of reason for people to suspect anything suspicious was going on. At night you could drive on Ocean Parkway and not see another car for a half hour.
You can, and the entire
maybe longer.
The entire side of Ocean Parkway, in between the parkway and the beach, is just filled with this thick brush. And I think people don't realize just how long and just how much brush is there.
Yeah,
and
it's
how
very
like
desolate.
you can a body put in there and it would not be found for a while.
Definitely not. Because even if I still like cruise on Ocean Parkway occasionally, just
I do too, all the time.
Yeah, and I mean it's you rarely even see any type of law enforcement vehicle on that.
During the day there are a lot, just because a lot of people are going to the beach. At the night,
with COVID and shit.
Yeah.
Well, there was like a COVID test site at Jones
There was
Beach
a COVID
while.
test site that was on Ocean Parkway, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, no, at night, I mean, I've even I've ridden my bike on Ocean Parkway at night, and there is nobody.
No.
And you do not see anything. There are no lights.
Especially when you go all the way out east, like the road. It's not the biggest road in the world. Like it doesn't go on that long. Like once you get to like where Oak Beach is, it's kind of towards the end.
Yeah.
Where the whole Shannon Gilbert
But
situation took place.
it's not long, but it feels like it goes on forever.
Yeah, it's a place where you very clearly, and again, many people have pointed this out, but you could pull off on the side of the road. I mean, you see people pulling off on the side of the road to go to the bathroom or do anything. But yeah, I mean, especially at night, unfortunately, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So the movie follows Marie Gilbert, who's the mother of Shannon Gilbert, who she was not the first victim, but it was the search for Shannon that kind of led to everything else.
Well, I'm sorry, and
Okay.
I'm gonna hit in with 1,000 caveats, because I happen to be obsessed with this case. But there's debate as to whether Shannon is even a victim of the Long Island serial killer.
Right.
For the purposes of this movie,
Yes.
I understand.
The movie is clearly suggesting that she is.
Yes.
And
movie.
There are actually a few things that the movie suggests that I'm not a fan of, because they do not pan out.
Let's work through
with
those.
reality.
Let's
just get with a summary first, and then we're going to get to that, just so everyone knows. So they follow Marie Gilbert, who is Shannon's mother. And Marie Gilbert, they focus on as she's the main character, which is when I heard that they were doing a movie of Lost Girls, I was actually kind of interested of who was going to be the main character. But I think by using Marie, you have a very good sense of like this mother is trying to get justice for her daughter, where her daughter goes missing, and because she is a sex worker, the police do not really take her disappearance seriously.
Which happened in real life.
Which happened in real life, and it's this mother's just fight of she was not just a sex worker. That's what she did as a profession, but she was my daughter, and she was a sister, and she had people that she loved, and she loved people, and she had hopes and dreams, and you need to take this seriously. So it's kind of constant harassment of Marie Gilbert to law enforcement.
Yeah, again, I don't see it as harassment. She's trying to get them to do their fucking job.
It's not harassment, but it's a confrontation.
She's a
confronting
confrontational
them,
person.
Basically saying you are not doing your job.
Yeah,
there's someone who is there's a young girl who is missing, and you need to take this seriously.
Yeah.
So
and the film kind of hits on this a little bit, but especially in Kolker's book, more so. But I mean, Marie Gilbert. I don't know this actor's name. I know she's
Amy Ryan.
Yeah, she's pretty well known. But they kind of choose to center the film around her. But you know, if you're a real Long Island serial killer follower, you know that there's debate as to whether Shannon, like I said, is even connected. But also, it's just very almost like a Hollywood move. Like, all right, we need a protagonist.
Yes.
So they just kind of like decide, like, all right, it's going to be the mother fighting for her daughter's, thing. But the truth of the matter is that Marie Gilbert was. Is it Marie or Mary? I should fucking know this, but
it's Mary. Mary? Or
anyway,
I should know it.
Shannon Gilbert's mother is. She's not exactly the perfect mom.
No, and they do hint at that in the movie, that she had given up Shannon for foster care, and in real life, maybe it's not so much this, but it does make a point of the movie of she's doing the best she can under the circumstances.
So her name is spelled Mari. I don't know if that's Mary or Marie.
So Mary.
Anyway.
I might have said it wrong in the breakdown now.
It's a very Hollywood choice that they made. Like, all right, we need, we're going to establish that this is the...
And what I'm saying about, because I mentioned that there is a class divide in this movie that's pretty present. And when you talk about Marie Gilbert, that a lot of people in the movie were saying that she's not a great mother, that she didn't really take care of Shannon, that she put Shannon in foster care. And the movie makes the case of, well, she did the best she could under the circumstances, because she was young when she had her, because she didn't have a lot of money, because she was by herself, and foster care was kind of the best move.
Yeah, that's what the movie says, but the book kind of I think it's a little more complicated than that, than just I did the best I could,
Right. Well, you're talking about, it's a very Hollywoodized version of it, and that is, that's her.
Well, okay, so the main sort of gripe that a lot of people have with her is that almost because of the media attention and because of the spotlight, that it was almost oh, now you're her mother, but it's why weren't you her mother when her life was all fucked up?
Right.
I don't know the fucking truth, but
Marie Gilbert is no longer alive, so
no, she's not.
It's not that.
R.I.P.
Rest in peace. But it's also, it's not that really she could really defend herself from people saying this against her.
Well, because, she was around for 6 years after the case. It's not like she died, during this time. But yeah, we should mention that one of the other daughters in the Gilbert family actually had serious mental illness and unfortunately murdered her mother because, from what I understand, she was under the impression, due to whatever her illness is, that her mother was the devil or possessed. That's what's out there. The reason that's important is obviously it's very, very unfortunate what happened to both Shannon and Marie, but it also speaks to the fact that there's severe mental illness in the Gilbert family, and that was one of the theories as to what may have happened with Shannon on that night.
Was that she kind of had a psychotic break?
Yes, which a lot of people thought was just like the police kind of covering their ass, like, oh, she had a psychotic break and ran off, and then it's like when you see that, it's like, hey, there was serious mental illness in the family. I don't know how that works. Like, if you were mentally ill, would I be likely to be, or vice versa? I don't know how it works between siblings, but that is an interesting point.
Right. So back to the story of the movie of basically she confronts these police and basically forces them to, take this seriously and start to look. And it is almost by accident that they're in the brush because they know that they're looking for this for this missing girl, and they end up finding these 4 other bodies.
The way that they kind of play it in the movie, from what I remember, is that there's a cop who lets his dog out.
Lets his dog out, yes.
The real story of what happened is that Shannon was missing, and they were performing some kind of training on the canine unit in the area. Now, whether it was to find Shannon or it was a coincidence, I can't recall exactly. But the point is, they were doing these canine exercises, and the dog picked up a scent. One of the dogs picked up a scent, which led to the discovery of the first body, which led to the discovery of the Gilgo 4.
Yeah.
So, in other words, they find these bodies, and none of them are Shannon.
Yeah. And then, so it's right after that the Gilbert family kind of becomes connected with the families of these other 4 victims, and that they are going to go to Oak Beach for a vigil. And I kind of like the idea of all these families kind of feel a connection to each other, that they feel like they all went through something, and they were all hurt by the same person, so they all feel somewhat of a connection, and they're almost a bigger family now. And it does speak, because you see like a lot of the family members who show up, they're very poor. One of the women says that she had to sell her TV just to have enough money to stay down there. And it does feel like a lot of these people have been on their own for most of their lives. So the fact that they're coming together and now are almost this big family unit is somewhat symbolic of, they finally come together over this one tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, and it's tough because we're simultaneously talking about a movie and a book and real life.
And a book and real life. Because in real life, they did not view themselves as one big family, and a lot of them didn't think that Marie Gilbert should have even been there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they were like, necessarily against each other. I'm not sure how true that is, but the point is, like, these people, they were very much working class people. Like, that's true. Also, I just want to give a shout out because the whole movie is about Shannon, and they don't even, I don't think, bring up the other people of the Gilgo 4's names. So we have Melissa Bartholomew, we have Maureen Brainerd Barnes, we have Megan Waterman, and we have Amber Lynn Costello.
Right.
So I just want to, bring their names in.
And it should be mentioned because this movie is very much about Shannon and the Gilbert family. And they're, the other families are there, but they're not given us much space. And I believe it's Melissa Bartholomew, who's...
Melissa Bartholomew. Yeah.
Melissa Bartholomew, whose sister was actually supposedly contacted by the killer in real life.
That's true.
Which is not in the movie at all.
No. Well, I mean, don't get me started on what's not in the movie. But yeah, I mean... we could talk a little bit about that. Basically, before we get to that, I also want to make mention of Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack. And Valerie Mack, her identity was just uncovered only a couple of months ago, and she had been deceased since 2000, partially discovered in Manorville. Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack were both partially discovered in Manorville, and then partially discovered in the Gilgo area, years apart from each discovery, which is very disturbing. But anyway, Melissa Bartholomew's younger sister received a phone call while she was missing, and she sees it comes up on her cell phone. Oh, Melissa's calling me. it's not Melissa, it's a man's voice, and he's saying that basically, I have your sister and I'm watching her rot, and I could find you and do the same to you. And he also uses a racial slur at her because she is mixed race, which is a very, very horrifying thing. And a lot of people kind of see this as an uncharacteristic slip up in the MO of the serial killer.
Well, what it leads me to believe is that he knew Melissa beforehand, that they probably had some sort of relationship, at least enough that...
That's also been speculated.
This is my speculation. This isn't...
No, I'm just saying, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Like, the people have...
that they at least had some sort of relationship. They at least knew each other well enough that... he knew that she had a sister who was mixed race, and that is not in the movie at all.
No,
and it
it's not.
seems like, I understand you want to make the focus on Shannon, you want to make the focus on the Gilbert family, but to not bring up that extremely important phone call, it seems like you're doing a misjustice to the other victims.
Well, you know what I'll say, and look, we have to again view this through the lens of it's Hollywood, it's Netflix.
Yeah.
They're doing, for what it was, it's pretty good. Meaning that they don't bend the truth that crazily.
Yes, and it's kind of a hard story to make a cinematic feature film out of.
They chose the lens of Mary Gilbert, and that's what they did. And they did a fine job doing that. So it's almost a little bit like we're watching something that we know so well that it's almost not fair.
Yeah.
Like to kind of, but that's, we can't help it because we see these things that are not mentioned, and it makes you a little frustrated because you just wish that that the truth could I mean, we hope that the case gets solved, obviously, but you want to at least have the facts presented. And let me just say that for anyone who is interested in this case and watched Lost Girls and wants to know deeper about the case, I cannot suggest strongly enough the podcast called Lisk, Long Island Serial Killer, by Chris Moss and Shannon McGarvey. This is the quintessential piece, right along with Josh Zeman and Rachel Mills' series, The Killing Season, and along with Bob Kolker's book, Lost Girls. The podcast Lisk is absolutely essential.
Yes.
And I had the immense pleasure to speak at length with Chris a couple of months back at the beginning of the summer. He is an amazing person, along with the producer Shannon, and they just do. It's everything that every piece of media has failed to do. These guys are doing. So I cannot, literally, their show is an absolute dream to a person like me. So I just wanted to give them the most enthusiastic of shout outs possible.
Right, but what I feel like with this movie is the story that they're trying to tell is not so much the story of trying to solve a series of murders and trying to find a killer. It's the story of a mother's struggle to try to get the police to take her daughter's disappearance seriously.
Exactly. And a lot of them had the same experience. If you listen to Maureen Brainerd Barnes' family, if you listen to a lot of their family, you have the problem with jurisdictions. So most of these people, they were not from Long Island. In fact, none of them were, except Amberlynn Costello
was from Babylon.
She went back and forth from Florida and North Carolina, but she did have a residence. So that's a big issue, because if someone goes missing and they live in Jersey City, like in Shannon's case, the police, you have to file a report in Jersey City. And we know that law enforcement, the agencies historically are very territorial and they don't like to work with each other. So that it was a big snag in the case, and also just the fact that they were sex workers and they're not going to take them seriously to begin with.
So that idea of jurisdiction is very present in the book.
Yes.
It's not so much in the movie. Kind of glosses over that.
Right, and I understand. It just makes it an easier villain to be like, hey,
Yeah.
Suffolk County, and listen, Suffolk County did themselves no favor in this case, and as a matter of fact, like the top law enforcement officials are, one went to federal prison, one's on his way to federal prison. It just was prolonged because of COVID, but Spoda's going to jail. So, who's the district attorney? Go.
So these women then confront the residents of Oak Beach. They're basically saying like, well, if the police aren't going to go and go around Oak Beach and ask people of what they saw that night and take statements, then we're going to do it. So it's very much these women they're fed up with the police not doing their job, so they're going to take it into their own hands. And not Peter Hackett, but John Brewer. Joe Brewer was the John who Shannon was seeing hired Shannon that night. And I do kind of love the scene of Marie Gilbert going up to Joe Brewer's like front door and like nailing a missing persons flyer for Shannon on that. Yeah. And then you have the police show up and escort the families away, and Marie Gilbert kind of makes a note that it only took them 12 minutes, while it took them over an hour to respond to her daughter's 911 call the night that she went missing.
Again, this is where reality is more complicated, because Shannon's 911 call, she didn't know where she was because she's not familiar with the area. So she said she's by Jones Beach. Jones Beach State Park is in the jurisdiction of the
Nassau County.
Of the New York State Police, because it's a state park.
Okay.
So that led to the confusion that night. I'm not making any excuses for Suffolk County, but it's just, again, there's a million of these, and that's the problem with movie versus real life. But
I mean, you're talking about that's how it happened in real life, but I think what the movie is trying to suggest, that to the police, the fact that these women are crashing into a gated community and questioning people, I think what the movie is trying to say, that to the police, that's the bigger issue. That's what calls their attention more.
Of course.
And I think you're making this connection of, not only do the lives of the wealthy matter more than the lives of the poor, but just like the mere comfort of the wealthy is more important than the lives of the poor.
Of course.
That you're going to respond quicker to rich people who are saying my Saturday is getting ruined than you are to a prostitute who's calling you saying people are trying to kill me.
I mean, it's like with politicians, it's like they're going to respond to their donors sooner than they're going to respond to someone asking for health care. I mean, it's the same idea. These are the people that are going to vote for the budgets that they want, and the backed by the right politicians and make the right contributions. It's all the same idea. And
there is very much an idea of, or a theme really, that's kind of run throughout the characters who are seen as who are police officers, that they shouldn't be putting so much effort on solving the case of a missing hooker, as one of them says. One of them literally says the line, "Who puts this much time into looking for a dead hooker?"
Yes.
And the hypocrisy that kind of exists, where that same character is seen at a party when they're, I guess they're trying to say that the girls there are sex workers or strippers, but you are partaking in, you are frequenting women who have this profession. But when one of them goes missing, you're not going to do your job for them. And this like huge hypocrisy of like, you think of prostitutes as being less than you, but you won't bat an eye of having a party and inviting them and frequenting them.
Well, this is a perfect opportunity to bring up the disgraced former police chief during this time. Actually, he was made the chief just after this time, but James Burke.
Okay.
And just because, I mean, you have a guy who was basically put in charge of this investigation, and not only did he do things like keep the FBI out from helping, which obviously would have helped solve the case sooner, potentially. It certainly would have got the ball rolling on better leads and everything like that comes with federal help. Not only did he block them from getting involved, but he was also obstructing justice in a number of ways, and he was also known to frequent sex workers himself, and that's been well documented. If you don't take my word for it, please look it up. There's a great Vice article called the Long Island's Dirtiest Cop or something like that. It's a fascinating article on his sort of basically career of corruption. There's also former law enforcement officials who have went on the record saying that he was either in possession or seeking out the possession of snuff films.
Ooh.
Yeah, he's anyway. There's a sex worker who goes by the name of Leanne. I don't believe that's her actual name, but that's how she presents herself to the media, I guess, to disguise her identity. But she's went on the record and actually held a press conference with the Gilbert estate family attorney, John Ray. And she goes on to say that during the time that this investigation was not only active, but, on the heels of finding these bodies, she was present in Oak Beach, which is essentially ground zero.
Yeah.
For the Long Island serial killer investigation. She was saying she was at parties in Oak Beach with James Burke, with sex workers, with drugs,
while the investigation was ongoing.
Right. So the point is, not only are you not doing your job to get this case solved, but you're spitting in the face of the families and everyone who gives a shit.
Yeah.
You're telling me that you're going to be caught dead at ground zero during the investigation, partaking in the same activities that this whole investigation is essentially grounded in. And not to mention, she also claims that he got violent with her, which is almost more important.
Which is more important.
He claims that or she claims rather that she was choked by him while they were engaging in intercourse, and that he referred to her as a, quote, bad whore, and threw money in her direction in sort of like a dismissive, condescending way. So, I mean, they kind of, to your point, like they kind of show that a little at like the retirement party.
They show that a little. So James Burke is not mentioned at all in the film.
No.
Instead, like they use the police commissioner of Richard Dormer as the character who's really like the focus of Marie Gilbert's anger. Yeah. There is the lower detective. I forget his actual name in the movie, but he's played by Dean Winter, who I always felt was kind of like a substitute for not necessarily James Burke, but the type of corruption that James Burke represents.
He's basically a combination of just like bad Suffolk County people.
Yes, and he's the one who's really the one who's most vocal that like this is not worth our time. And he's also the one who, like, he claims in the beginning, like, oh, Oak Beach, me and some of the guys will go down there to party and stuff. And he's the one who's like at the police commissioner's retirement party at the end of the movie. He's the one who's like, he has a stripper or a prostitute on his lap, and
look, and we're not fucking choir boys up here, right? Like, if you want to go see a stripper or you want to employ a sex worker, knock yourself out.
No, that's not the case.
Right.
I 100%. Not only do I fully support sex workers, I also, I mean, I don't think there should be anything wrong with sex work or the men who frequent sex workers.
I agree.
But if you do that and you
right.
partake, then you need to treat need to treat them as human beings.
Yeah.
And when a girl goes missing, you cannot treat this as the case of the dead hooker. You need to treat this as a human being has a family that's looking up to you. That has a family.
But I mean, look, how many examples do we need? I mean, there's plenty of times now people have this amazing ability to just sort of do one thing, say one thing, and do another, and it's look. Again, I'm a broken record, but you have to look up the actual facts and the actual players of this case because it's fucking crazier than any movie could ever even attempt to make it.
Yes. There is something that throughout kind of just movies in general has very much annoyed me is just like how synonymous it is the relationship between like prostitutes in movies and being murdered, as if like there are.
What are you talking about though? Look at real life.
I know, but
real life is a connection.
But there is. Up until this movie doesn't do it, but there's almost like a normalization in media of prostitutes being murdered, and there are several.
There's a normalization in real life of prostitutes getting murdered. That's the problem. That's the problem. Look at the statistics.
And that is the problem, but I'm saying that maybe if there wasn't so much media and so many TVs and movies that make jokes about how often prostitutes are murdered, then maybe people would not take it as lightly in real life.
But that's the whole argument of, I mean, you're making like the most conservative 80s argument of all time.
No,
that's like the video games cause school shootings argument.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's a normalization of it. That you're kind of the idea of you're putting it in people's head constantly of, well, of course she was murdered, she was a prostitute, which it shouldn't be that way, and people should not normalize it.
I don't disagree with that. I just think like I don't think that movies or media is the culprit. I think it's a much deeper culprit. You know, that's kind of ingrained in our society for generations of, you know, and it goes into, you know, shame about sex to misogyny to
I agree that it's
just a whole
I agree that that's not where it started, but it does help to normalize things, which is a problem.
Maybe, but then again, you could say that about a million things. You know, it's like you could say that about like any type of movie where there's any violence. I'm just saying that's an argument that gets made all the time, and it's generally against like artists, and it's like, well, you're worried about art, but what are you changing in real fucking society? You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway.
Well, and there is also just there's kind of what you're talking about of like it goes back like generational. There is kind of like a theme of seeing women as less than and seeing promiscuous women as being less than.
Of course.
And that they are not worth our time. And also like just Marie being a woman going into a precinct that's predominantly men and trying to demand them to do their job and them at first not taking her seriously is a very much of just like a man not taking women seriously and brushing women off forever and saying like, oh, this is just a hysterical woman. This is just some crazy woman who's going in and knocking on people's door, and not, this is a mother whose daughter is missing.
Of course.
Who has every right to be angry. I
mean, that gets to the core of the Long Island serial killer case, essentially. You know, there was when Shannon was eventually, her body was discovered, I think the cause of death was listed as misadventure, which sounds like this like medieval kind of, and I'm not the first person to point this out, but it sounds like this medieval sort of like just how out of touch, like what she died of misadventure. Like, what does that even fucking mean? Like, she was a wild woman and she went out on the town and next thing you know, she died of misadventure. Like, that's not a thing, guy.
That's
like,
That's the first I've heard that.
Oh, yeah.
So
No,
that
no,
was the
that's the-
original cause of death.
Misadventure.
That's insane.
Insane. And then you have our pal. He's not our pal. Peter Hackett. Which
I want to talk about Peter. You say your thing, but I want to talk about
saying,
Peter Hackett.
as far as like ridiculous kind of like notions of like hysterical women go, I believe it has been confirmed, and he denied it, but it's been confirmed through phone records, I think, that he placed a phone call to Mary Gilbert while Shannon was missing, and said that he ran a home for wayward girls.
Wasn't it the next day?
Yeah,
in the
it might have been the day.
In the movie, they say it's the next day. In real life, maybe not.
No, I mean, I think it was a matter of a couple days. I don't think it was, it was around that time. But anyway, like, again, what does that mean? Wayward girls? Like, it sounds like the fucking Salem witch trials or something,
Yeah. So Peter Hackett in this movie is clearly, I would say, really the police commissioner is like the main antagonist of, like, that's the conflict of the movie of of Marie is trying to get this man to do his job and take these murders seriously.
Yeah.
But
by all accounts, Dormer was actually a really good guy. But
yeah, he died last year, I think.
It might have been a couple years ago. Yeah. It was recent.
Yes, and I think that's why they chose, Richard Dormer to be kind of that character, because he's someone in Suffolk County whose reputation hasn't been completely tarnished.
And by the way, great. I don't know the guy who played him, but he did a great job.
Yes, he's one of the few good performances in this movie.
Yeah, to be honest, this movie.
Yes, we should talk about this movie is not. Great.
It's not Citizen Kane.
I'm blanking on his name, but he was in The Usual Suspects. He was like the main.
Really?
Yes, he was the main character in Usual Suspects.
Wasn't Kevin Spacey the main character?
No.
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey was more like the bad guy, or he was in Usual Suspects.
Okay.
But the acting is not great, which is surprising because there are a lot of actors in this that I've seen in other things who I like. Amy Ryan specifically. She was on The Office. That she's hysterical in.
Her performance was so at best. I have to be honest.
In other things I've liked her, not so much in this.
This was not a good performance. It was just very put on. I didn't believe anything she was saying. It just felt.
This is what I think, and I have noticed this a lot with directors who are known for documentary, or their main filmography is documentary, and then they go into their first feature film. It's the dialogue that I notice is the weakest. It's the dialogue and the acting that I notice is the weakest. You're watching these conversations that are very stiff, and saying lines to each other that people would never say, and it feels like they're reciting lines back and forth to each other rather than having an actual conversation.
Exactly. That's exactly what this feels like.
Amy Ryan is talking to her daughter. The younger actress, she's in Jojo Rabbit, and I liked her in that. And both of them are good actresses.
I'm sure,
but they're stiff together, and it seems like they were told. I mean, I don't want to talk shit about Liz Garbus because she actually makes really good documentary films.
Yeah, no, I know she did. Something's happening to Aunt Diane or
Whatever Happened to Miss Simone.
I don't know that one.
The
Aunt Diane. Something's
maybe
wrong
we're
with
thinking
Aunt Diane.
And she also did I'll Be Gone in the Dark. She directed a lot of episodes.
Yeah, which...
you didn't like I'll Be Gone in the Dark? I thought I'll Be Gone in the Dark was great.
Listen, shout out to Michelle McNamara.
Yes, Michelle McNamara.
And shout out to Patton Oswalt. Very, very sorry that she passed away. Fucking horrific.
Yes.
I feel so terrible for her little daughter, their little daughter. Rest in peace. Just what a tragedy. Having said that, I thought the movie was. I thought that series was way too focused on their family.
Really?
I have to say that.
I like that about it because, like how this movie isn't really about the Long Island serial killer. It's about a mother trying to get justice for her daughter.
I see where you're going.
That documentary series is not really about the Golden State Killer. It's about this woman who finds this case and becomes obsessed with it.
Okay, fine. I could accept that. I just thought it was presented as like it's gonna be, the Golden State Killer.
Yeah.
And which it is, but I'm waiting for like the documentary on that.
If you're looking on just a straight documentary about the Golden State Killer, that's not the one to watch.
I hate to say it, but it felt like just kind of like a little pretentious. That's me. That's me. I'm sorry if that offends people.
I don't know if I would agree with that.
It felt like I don't know. It just felt like we're about the victims here. We're about the and it's an important story and it's an amazing story that she did, and I'm very, very thankful that she got this whole thing going. But anyway, that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah. So Liz Garbus. And you're talking about like the dialogue scenes is really what I have the biggest issue with.
I agree.
It's very
and
much
the performances are a little like, especially the main performance. I just like when she's angry and she's hanging up the phone. I'm like, I don't believe anything you're doing right now.
Yeah. I feel like the scenes when she's angry, it goes because her performance is very muted for most of the movie, except for like the moments where she gets angry. And I really felt like there's no build up to that anger, or at least you do not see. I mean, you 100% understand why she's angry, but you do not see her, like the actress, get there emotionally. You do not go on that journey with her. It's kind of just goes from muted to very loud and angry and emotional. And Amy Ryan, I very much like as an actress. She's good in a lot of things. A lot of the actors, Kevin Coring, who's in The Departed, who's in a lot of
Kevin Corrigan,
who's in The Departed, who's in a lot of movies, and he can be funny and he can be serious and he's great. And in this movie, he's kind of just a dud.
I didn't mind him just because it's such a minor role.
It's a minor role.
And to be honest, I was like, oh, I love this guy.
Yeah.
I met him once when he came into our bar.
Oh, yeah?
Working, yeah.
Oh, what year was this?
Oh, man, a good maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, he would have just been off 10 years ago, so The Departed, he would have just... Oh, no, that's 2006. All right, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is a lot of... besides the actor who plays Richard Dormer... I thought was very good. Dean Winter, who's kind of like the douchebag detective. He's good, but he's playing a part.
It's a 2-bit role.
He's playing a character who, from your first scene, you know everything about.
Exactly.
Like you know who this guy is. Exactly. You know everything about him, and it's 2-dimensional.
He didn't do a bad job. It wasn't a deeply written character.
No. And a lot of these characters are not. Besides, like Marie Gilbert, a lot of these characters are not.
Even Marie Gilbert wasn't really deeply written. She's like, I'm the mom, and I'm pissed off, and blah blah blah. And then she's like, "Oh man, you only gave me 3 shifts this week." I was like, "Have you ever had a real job?"
That was one of the most annoying lines.
Have you ever had a real job?
Yes. And then there's the character Kim.
Maybe she has. I'm sure. Maybe she has. But I'm just saying, like, I don't believe you've ever worked.
There's the character Kim who. I forget which she. I think she was Amber's sister.
Yes.
Okay. So
by the way,
terrible performance.
Well, hold on,
terrible performance.
I gotta say, they paid Kim Overstreet the highest compliment with who they cast. I don't know who this lady is. She's attractive. Kim Overstreet, not so much.
All right. I've never seen a picture of her, so I don't know. But. That character, she's played as a joke in the beginning, and then her performance it never becomes more than that. But this character could be used like for so much emotion for everybody else, because at least how I saw it, you have this girl. She's the sister of one of the victims. She's a former prostitute,
and current,
because it ends up she's getting into it,
and that's a real that actually happened.
But she has that line of like where she's talking to Marie Gilbert, and Marie Gilbert doesn't want her to go back, and she's like, "This is who I am. This is all I'm going to be." And I feel like emotionally, you can get so much more out of that character when one. You can have the other victims' families view this character as like this who relate them to their own daughters who went missing, because it's kind of like a similar of you could have had that connection. You could have had Marie like thinking of her as like a replacement Shannon, of someone who like, well, my daughter is gone, but this is someone who I can take care of. I'm just saying, like, in generalities, like, I'm not saying necessarily they should have, but these are directions they could have gone, because I really do feel like that character Kim is very wasted.
Yeah. Just to talk a little bit about the real story. So Kim Overstreet is Amberlynn Costello's older sister, and Kim Overstreet actually got Amberlynn Costello into the business, and Kim Overstreet moved to North Carolina, and Amberlynn Costello moved into, I'm not sure why they use different last names, but they're sisters.
In movies. Oh,
no, in real life.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I don't know.
But so
they might have had different fathers. I don't know.
I'm not sure. Or maybe it was a marriage thing. I don't know. But Amber, the younger sister, is one of the Gilgo 4 bodies that were found in 2010. And she lived in a house it's generally reported as Babylon. That's incorrect. It's West Babylon. I've been to the house on America Avenue. And she lived in a house with Dave Schaller. And Dave Schaller and Amber were basically heroin addicts together. And he was also sort of like her pimp and her quote-unquote bodyguard. And they would do what they call house calls at the West Babylon house. So what happened in Amber's story is that, and Dave tells it, is that she received a bunch of phone calls, and the John, who ended up being the serial killer, basically convinced her to leave her phone home. I remember this from the book. Yes, and so I just wanted to make mention of who this Kim is. Kim is Amber, who's one of the victims' older sisters. And in real life, while all the vigils are going on and they're getting together, the group finds out through Backpage or Craigslist that she's been posting ads again. Yeah, it's so Craigslist, because I know Backpage obviously is the app for it, but I don't think that was around back then. I don't think so. I think it was. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because the way that she actually justified it in real life was, she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna find him." And it's like, no, you're not. You're just addicted to this fucking lifestyle, which I get, because think about it again. Think about the financial angle. You know, you're rolling the dice, but you're like, I'm going to post an ad. I'm going to get with a guy. It's not going to be the fucking serial killer, and I'm going to make X amount of money, except maybe it will be. They do. There's a line when they first see that Kim is back, doing sex work, where they say that, oh, she must be doing it to try to find this guy. And then when Marie talks to Kim about it, she's like, that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because this is who I am. Yeah. And I mentioned that, like, the theme of these men treating sex workers as that's all you are, of you're not a person, you're a sex worker. You don't have a family, you're just a sex worker. And I feel like the character of Kim kind of has internalized that, where she's been told that so many times that she starts to believe it on her own. I don't really know if that idea is really shown properly in the movie. Yeah. Like I said, I believe that Kim was a very wasted character. That is, I mean, look, it's not a good movie. Yeah. Well, all right. So I talk about, and I said, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was because it's a Long Island serial killer, and we have, we've always felt a connection to this case. Another reason why I wanted to kind of break down this movie is because even
even in movies I don't like that I would call bad, I can always find something that I do like about it.
Sure.
And I can always find something that I can learn about it. And I do have kind of this advice for like young filmmakers or people who like to study film is watch bad movies. Watch bad movies because in good movies, in very extremely well-made movies by extremely experienced directors, a lot of it is done very well, so you don't notice a lot of it. But in bad movies, since so much of it is done poorly, when there is something that's done very well, it catches your eye.
So let me ask you: was there a moment that was good about this movie for you? I have something, but I'll let you go first.
Particular moments, not so much.
Or to your point, like there's usually something you take away or something you like, even if it's a bad movie.
This is what I take away, and that I think it shows from Liz Garbus, who is normally doing documentaries, is I did feel like this movie is shot like a documentary. And I mentioned that in my breakdown, and I want to just go into more detail about it. There's a lot of like landscape shots where they're doing these wide sweeping shots of Long Island. In normal cinematic movies, you wouldn't have too many of those. A lot of those, or like sunrise shots or anything like that. In documentaries, that's something you want to put in a lot as like transitions. There's a lot of scenes where the camera is either like behind a bush looking out, or like there's a lot of characters are shot like through a window or through a mirror or something. That's a technique that's very present in documentaries because it adds kind of like a sense of realism to it. And I do believe that, you know, you take away how bad the acting is and how there's dialogue that you know, people would normally not say in real life, but there is a sense of like, this is the most realistic version of our world possible, where it's like, one, things look very realistic. They're shot like you just took a camera and put them out on the street. And then how the story goes is just this depressing of, yeah, well, in real life, like sometimes you don't get the answers that you deserve. And sometimes things don't work out well.
Yeah.
And
like in this case so far, even though they're making progress. They're making progress,
but
Valerie Mack was huge.
Yeah, but there is a very depressing tone and a very realistic tone. I mean, this movie in general is a bummer. This movie is...
You know what I loved about it, though?
What?
You might disagree. I love the way this fucking movie looked.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to... Yeah.
Just it, I mean, like, the color of it.
Right.
I fucking
it's
love
a very...
the color.
We're in a depressing world where things do not work out for you. You can tell from the beginning, like, these are characters that, like... things have never worked out for them, and things aren't going to work out for them. And it's kind of saying from the beginning, like, look, this isn't going to have a happy ending.
I mean, the last scene, which I kind of thought was a weird choice, like, she's hovering over, like, Shannon's skeleton.
She's hovering over Shannon's skeleton, and it's how just sad is it that, like, that's the victory.
I know.
How sad is it that the fact that we found your daughter and we can finally say that for sure she is dead, that's the victory. Because honestly, she knew her daughter was dead the entire movie. She just wanted the police to do something about it. She just wanted the police to go out there and find out where her body. She just wanted the police to do her job. And like, how sad is it, like, that's the victory at the end, is that she finally got, because she's also saying, like, you need to drain the marsh because that's the only place that you ever did. And the victory is just convincing the police commissioner to finally drain the marsh. And
the victory is finally convincing the police, like, hey, have you looked, like, where she was?
Yeah, because that's also where she went missing, and that's the one place that they didn't look.
Just saying, maybe check where she was.
And then you see in text at the end that they never find this guy, and that Marie Gilbert is murdered by her youngest daughter, who has schizophrenia.
Both true.
Both true, but it's like...
Now, there's speculation.
Oh, well, I'm saying as it relates to the end of the film, and we can get into that.
Yeah.
But it's really just, she found her daughter. It's a small victory, but in a lifetime of just misery and disappointment, where this is the small victory, but then you see in the text just, she's murdered, 6 years after that, but that's how that story ends for her.
Yeah, and again, I remember, so this case is so personal because everything that's played out, we've been, we've kind of been receiving as local news essentially.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, the fact of the matter is, this is probably not the last time that this topic of the Long Island serial killer is going to be discussed on our show.
No, we have a lot to say about it.
I mean, we kind of scraped the surface, sort of. It was, I don't know if that's the right expression.
That's also this movie. It's just you're getting
the
the very basic story. Because there's so much more.
There's so much more. Honestly, we could do 10 shows in a row on this, and it still wouldn't be enough. But so I would imagine that this will come back at a certain point in time. Hopefully, well, let me not say what we have working, but this will not be the first time you hear about us discussing this topic, so I hope you don't get tired of that. But again, just for anyone who is interested in this case, I have to point you to there's three that are worth mentioning. There's a lot of shows out there. Most of them are complete and utter garbage. They can't even get the most basic facts right. But there's three, so we'll go in chronological order. So you have Lost Girls, which is obviously the book by Robert Kolker, which is what this movie is based on. Yeah. Essential reading on the subject, and he's basically the godfather of the Long Island serial killer at this point. I mean, if not for him, a lot of shit would never have gotten the media attention that it did.
Right.
Also, let me not forget this: Jacqueline Gallucci of the Long Island Press, formerly of the Long Island Press, great journalist, investigative journalist. She wrote the first piece on Megan Waterman, who went missing. And she wrote an article in the Long Island Press that essentially said when people go missing on Long Island, some people matter, sex workers don't. Don't quote me on that. Look it up for yourselves. But she kind of kicked off the whole thing. Got to shout out Jacqueline Gallucci. I've also interacted with her. Then you have Robert Kolker's Lost Girls book. Then you have a series called The Killing Season, which is fantastic. It goes beyond the Long Island serial killer, but the focus is sort of in the beginning on the Long Island serial killer. They do a few episodes and they kind of come back to it at the end of the series. But Joshua Zeman, who directed the documentary Cropsey, and Rachel Mills, who's also fantastic. They have their series, The Killing Season. I highly recommend that. And also, like I mentioned earlier, must check out the LISK podcast, Long Island Serial Killer podcast, hosted by Chris Moss and by Mopac Audio, Chris Moss and Shannon McGarvey. Just the ultimate play-by-play run-through of what occurred and what has occurred, what's happened since, and interviews with all key people. It's just fantastic. And with that, I think we should probably wrap up. So
we should wrap it up.
I don't know if you have any other thoughts, but I did a lot of talking on this one.
Yeah, briefly, I wanted to just mention, because in the movie, they kind of hint at that Peter Hackett is the killer. When in real life, anyone who seriously followed the case, you would say, no, Peter Hackett.
I mean, some people put some stock into Peter Hackett. I mean, he did himself no favors with his very suspicious behavior, and the fact that, let's be honest, her body was eventually found close to his home. Now, granted, a lot of those homes are kind of close, so
yeah. But I think
he's a creep.
At least it's my opinion that he was a creepy dude who wanted the attention and just wanted to insert himself into the case because he saw something important was happening in Oak Beach and he couldn't stand the fact that he wasn't a part of it. Yeah,
and a lot of people have attested to the fact that that's kind of right up his alley in terms of what his personality is over the years of knowing him. That that's sort of something he would definitely do. Peter Hackett's interesting. I mean, like, I don't generally spend a lot of time on Peter Hackett just because I personally don't think he's the killer.
No, and
all.
I wouldn't even mention him at all. But in the movie, like, that's clearly what they're trying to suggest.
Yeah, and again, that's a choice where it's like, you know, and look, I'll be honest. I like the acting performance that the guy who Peter Hackett played. I like his performance. It's not accurate at all with like how Peter Hackett actually is. But I thought he made some interesting choices. Like, it was a little heavy-handed. Like, well, I'm kind of creepy, aren't I? Like, and like it was a little much.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't a great performance, but I liked his effort. I'll say that.
I gotcha.
You know.
All right. If that's all our final thoughts, if we're just ending on Peter
and
Hackett,
again, we're gonna come back to this. It's just,
and we're gonna come back to this.
It's too big of a topic.
It's a great thing. We watch Lost Girls.
Watch it.
It's not the best movie. You can learn something, and also like something I just want people to take away, that if you're studying films, don't only look at good movies. Look at bad movies, because you will find something interesting in there. All right. This has been Movies by McManus. Follow us on social media. If you like this video and you want to check out our YouTube channel, where I'll do like 10-minute breakdowns of each movie. You can also find the video format of this podcast. Follow us on social media at Movies by McManus. I'm your host, Greg.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching so far, and stay tuned. We got a lot of episodes coming, and if you're listening just on the podcast, like my brother said, check out our YouTube channel. He does these short breakdowns of each topic, and then we do an expanded podcast on it. So, and if you're on YouTube watching this, check out the podcast. Goes hand in hand, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good night.